He owned every room he walked into. 3 Academy Awards, 12 nominations, a record that still stands for any male actor in history. A grin so loaded with menace and charm that directors fought to point cameras at it. And then, without a farewell speech, without a final film built around his exit, without so much as a press release, Jack Nicholson simply vanished. Not from the planet, from the work. His last film, How Do You Know, landed in theaters on December 17th, 2010, flopped spectacularly, and that was it. No announcement, no retirement party, no interview where he sat in a leather chair and reflected on a life in cinema. Just silence and a front gate on Mulholland Drive that stayed closed. For more than a decade, Hollywood whispered. Was he sick? Had something fractured in his mind? Why would the most charismatic actor of his generation, a man who seemed to feed on the spotlight the way other people feed on food, choose to disappear at the exact moment when studios would have paid almost anything to have him back? The answer, it turns out, is written across the full arc of his life, not just the last chapter of it. Before we follow the man behind the gate, let's deal with the number that stops people cold. Jack Nicholson's current net worth is estimated at $400 million, according to Celebrity Net Worth and corroborated by multiple financial publications as of 2025. Some estimates push the figure as high as $450 to $590 million when accounting for the full current value of his art holdings and real estate. Let that sit for a moment. A man who has not appeared in a film in over 15 years, who gives no interviews, who attends almost no public events, is sitting on a fortune that rivals some of the most active entertainers alive today. How? Because Jack Nicholson was not just a brilliant actor. He was one of the shrewdest financial operators Hollywood ever produced, and he started building that foundation at exactly the right moment in the industry's history. The first piece of the puzzle is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1975. Nicholson played Randall McMurphy in Milos Forman's adaptation of Ken Kesey's novel, and the performance won him the first of his 3 acting Oscars. The film swept the 5 major Academy Award categories: Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, and Screenplay, becoming only the second film in history to accomplish that after it happened one night in 1934. But what secured Nicholson's financial future was not the award. It was the contract. Rather than accepting a straightforward flat fee, Nicholson negotiated a share of the film's profits. Cuckoo's Nest grossed more than $163 million worldwide. By 1978, his back-end earnings from that single film were reported to be somewhere between $15 million and $20 million, roughly $60 million in today's dollars. He had essentially bet on himself and won with the kind of return that hedge funds envy. He did again in 1989, and this time the number became legendary. Warner Brothers offered Nicholson $10 million upfront to play the Joker in Tim Burton's Batman. He said no. Instead, he took $6 million as a base salary and structured a deal that gave him a percentage of the box office gross and a share of merchandise revenue. Batman earned $411 million worldwide. By 1994, Nicholson's total take on the film was reported to exceed $60 million, equivalent to approximately $110 million in today's terms, according to financial analysts who have tracked the deal. It remains one of the most lucrative single-film contracts an actor has ever negotiated, and it fundamentally reshaped how major stars approach studio deals for years afterward. In A Few Good Men in 1992, he earned $5 million for just 10 days of filming. His total screen time in that film runs to roughly 15 minutes, which works out to more than $333,000 per minute on screen. He then came back for an extra morning of shooting without charging an additional fee, a detail that tells you he was already operating from a position of such financial security that the money was secondary to the work. For as good as it gets in 1997, reports indicate his salary reached approximately $15 million. For Anger Management in 2003, the figure was reportedly around $20 million. In How Do You Know in 2010, his final film, he was paid $12 million for a supporting role. The cumulative documented salary across his career exceeds $126 million in upfront fees alone, according to research published by Wealthy Gorilla, and that number does not include inflation adjustments or the substantial back-end bonuses that multiplied his earnings from Cuckoo's Nest and Batman many times over. What surprises most people is not how much Nicholson earned from acting. It's what he did with the money once he had it. While many actors of his era burned through their fortunes on excess, and Nicholson's personal life certainly generated its share of excess, he was quietly constructing two alternative pillars of wealth that would eventually be worth more than his entire acting income combined. The first is real estate. Nicholson's primary residence is a multi-property compound on Mulholland Drive in Beverly Hills that he began assembling in 1969. The same year, Easy Rider transformed his career overnight. Over the following decades, he expanded it into what is now a sprawling estate that includes property once owned by Marlon Brando. He also owns homes in Santa Monica, Venice, a 70-acre ranch in Malibu, a beachfront property in Kailua, Hawaii, and multiple properties in Aspen, Colorado. His total real estate holdings are estimated to be worth more than $100 million, according to Celebrity Net Worth and Hello Magazine. One transaction illustrates just how well Nicholson's property instincts have aged. In 1980, he and music producer Lou Adler purchased a historic 8,000-square-foot home in Aspen, the Newberry House, built around 1890, for $550,000. They sold it in 2013 for $11 million. The subsequent buyer's family sold the same property in 2024 for just under $60 million. Even after Nicholson's exit, the asset he chose kept appreciating at a rate that made most stock portfolios look timid. The second pillar is art. This is a part of the Nicholson story that consistently catches people off guard because it doesn't fit the image. The unhinged eyebrows, the lawless grin, the characters who seem one breath away from violence. None of it suggests a man who spends his afternoon studying Picasso and Matisse. But that is exactly what Nicholson became. His collecting journey began in the 1960s, where his grandmother's amateur painting habit sparked his early curiosity. The pivot into serious collecting came in the early 1970s, when fashion icon Diana Vreeland urged him to attend a Sotheby's auction in London to see the work of California artist Ed Ruscha. Nicholson got hooked, and never stopped buying. Today, his collection is estimated to be worth $150 million, according to Celebrity Net Worth and art publications, including Art Majeur magazine and Invaluable. It includes works by Pablo Picasso, Henri Matisse, Auguste Rodin, René Magritte, Amedeo Modigliani, Tamara de Lempicka, Andy Warhol, Claude Monet, and Edgar Degas, among others. Artist Ed Ruscha, whose work forms a significant part of the collection, called it one of the best collections out here as far back as 1995. Nicholson himself put his philosophy simply, I like a lot of kinds of painters. You can't name a painter that I don't like. At $150 million, the art collection alone exceeds the value of his real estate holdings and represents one of the most valuable celebrity-held private collections anywhere in the world. Add the real estate, add the art, add the decades of back-end earnings, the profit shares, the $12 million check he cashed for his last film in 2010. You arrive at a man whose financial situation did not merely survive his disappearance from acting. It thrived during it. Understanding why Nicholson stepped away requires understanding what shaped the man in the first place. And the shape is stranger than almost any character he played. He was born John Joseph Nicholson on April 22nd, 1937, in Neptune, New Jersey. His mother, June Nicholson, was 17 years old and unmarried. The family, navigating the social pressures of the era, made a decision that would echo through Nicholson's life for decades. June's mother, Ethel May, registered herself as the baby's mother and raised Jack as her own son. June became, in the official family story, his older sister, the lie held for nearly 40 years. In 1974, when Nicholson was 37 years old and already one of Hollywood's most recognized faces following Easy Rider, The Last Detail in Chinatown, a researcher from Time magazine called him while preparing a cover story. The man on the other end of the phone told him that his mother was actually his grandmother, and his sister, June, was his biological mother. By that point, June had died of cancer in 1963. Ethel May had died in 1970. The people who could have explained anything were gone. Nicholson met the revelation with composed disbelief that itself became part of the Nicholson mythology. It's not something you choose, he later said, but I can handle the truth. He described it as a dramatic event, but not a traumatizing one, because by then he was, in his own words, already psychologically formed. Whether or not that assessment was entirely accurate, and the patterns of his emotional life suggest it may have been more complicated than the public statement let on, what's undeniable is that growing up inside a lie of that magnitude leaves specific marks on a person. It teaches you, at a cellular level, that surfaces are not reality, that the story people tell about themselves is always a construction, that identity is performed more than it is inherited. Those are not bad lessons for an actor. They may have been the only lessons he ever truly needed. By the 1980s, Nicholson had entered a phase of his career that few actors ever reach. He was not simply famous. He was gravitational. The kind of presence that bent a film's entire atmosphere toward him regardless of how much screen time he occupied. Stanley Kubrick understood this when he cast Nicholson in The Shining in 1980. The production became legendary for its extremity. The famous axe through the door scene reportedly required more than 130 takes and destroyed approximately 60 doors before Kubrick was satisfied. A separate dialogue scene reached 148 takes, entering the Guinness World Records for retakes. Steadicam operator Garrett Brown, who worked extensively on the film, witnessed the physical toll it took on the entire cast and crew. Louise Burns later told The Independent that Nicholson became so exhausted during filming that he would fall asleep on the set floor between scenes. What emerged from that pressure was Jack Torrance, one of the most studied characters in horror film history. Nicholson later said he was drawn to the role precisely because it allowed him to explore disintegration from the inside. Terms of Endearment in 1983 proved he could do the opposite. As the aging astronaut Garrett Breedlove, he deployed charm and warmth and effortless comedic timing. The Academy gave him Best Supporting Actor. He had now won in 2 different acting categories across films that could not have been more tonally different, which is a kind of range that even critics who want to contain his legacy were forced to acknowledge. Then came the 1990s and the creeping realization, visible in retrospect, that Nicholson was beginning to select roles not for career advancement, but for personal interest. A Few Good Men, As Good as It Gets, which gave him his 3rd Oscar in 1998, and placed him among a tiny number of actors to achieve that. About Schmidt in 2002, where he played a retired actuary confronting the emptiness of his own life with a stillness that reminded audiences of how powerful restraint could be in his hands. The Departed in 2006, where he played Frank Costello in Martin Scorsese's Crime Landscape, reportedly improvising large sections of performance and using props on set specifically to disturb his fellow actors and push their instinctive reactions. After The Departed, the trail went quiet. He passed on Ready Player One. He declined to return as Jack Torrance in Dr. Sleep. Friends began noting that his asking price had been set so high that no production could realistically say yes, and that this appeared to suit him perfectly. In 2013, Nicholson gave a rare interview to Vanity Fair, one of the only times he has spoken substantively about his absence. He said he was no longer driven to be out there anymore. He said the only films he cared about were ones that genuinely moved people. And then he offered a sentence that landed harder than anything else in conversation. He no longer had the energy to both work and enjoy his private life, and admitted that during his final few films he had barely left his hotel at night. That comment is a key to everything. For a man whose off-screen legend was built on extraordinary appetites, the parties, the relationships, the courtside seats at Lakers games, the sense that Jack Nicholson off camera was as much a performance as anything he put on film, the acknowledgement that the energy for all had a limit was quietly devastating. He had held season tickets to the Los Angeles Lakers since 1970. By some estimates, he spent approximately $10 million on those seats over the years. For decades, his front row presence was as much a part of the Lakers' identity as the players on the floor. His last public appearance at a game, before a long gap, came to home opener on October 19, 2021, when he returned on April 28, 2023. Sitting beside his son Ray for a playoff game against Memphis, the photographs that circulated showed a man who looked significantly older than the public's last clear memory of him. Rumors about memory problems surfaced and spread online. Neither Nicholson nor his representatives ever issued a formal confirmation. Sources speaking people close to him consistently pushed back against the most alarming claims. Danny DeVito, who had forged his friendship with Nicholson 50 years earlier on the set of Cuckoo's Nest, told People magazine in mid-2025 that Nicholson was great, that he had just celebrated Nicholson's 88th birthday.